A man is standing a few feet away from Jesus, on a slope of dry grass above the Sea of Galilee, and he is watching something he does not fully understand. Jesus is praying. Not preaching, not performing. There is no crowd to impress in this moment. No sick man waiting to be healed. No Pharisee waiting to argue. Jesus has simply gone off a little way. The way he does. And he is talking to someone the disciple cannot see. And when he finishes, when he goes quiet and still, the man cannot hold the question in any longer. It comes out of him almost before he decides to say it. Lord, teach us to pray. Now stop and feel the strangeness of that request. These are grown men, Jewish men. They have prayed their whole lives. They learned the words before they could walk. They have said the morning prayers and the evening prayers and the prayers over bread and wine 10,000 times. And yet here is one of them, standing on a hillside, admitting out loud that he does not actually know how to do the one thing he has been doing since childhood. Because he has just watched Jesus pray, and whatever that was, it was different. So Jesus turns to him, and in the next 60 seconds, he gives the world the most repeated 50 words in human history. More people will speak these words tonight, in more languages, than any other sentence ever composed. Prisoners will whisper them, soldiers will breathe them before they die, children will fall asleep on them. You have probably said them yourself. Maybe so many times the words went smooth and worn, like a coin passed through too many hands. And here is the strange and slightly painful truth. Most of us have said this prayer hundreds of times, and most of us have never once heard it. Because almost every line means something sharper, stranger, and more personal than the version we memorized. So we are going to slow all the way down, line by line, word by word, back into the Aramaic Jesus actually spoke, and the Greek his followers wrote down. And I promise you, by the end of this, you will not be able to say this prayer the old way ever again. There is even one word buried in the middle of it that appears almost nowhere else in the entire Greek language. One of the sharpest minds of the early church, a man named Origen, went hunting for that word across every scroll he could find, and came back empty. Nobody could tell him what it meant. We will get to that word, but not yet. Because first you have to understand what this prayer actually is. This is not a poem. This is not a ritual. This is not a magic formula you say to make God do things. This is a doorway, and Jesus is holding it open, looking at that disciple, looking, honestly, at you, and saying, this is how you come in. It starts with a single word. And that word would have stopped every listener on that hillside cold. Our Father. 2 words. You have said them so many times they barely register anymore. But on that hillside, those 2 words would have landed like a slap. Here is what most people miss. When Jesus said, Father, he did not use a formal, reverent, keep your distance word. He used the word Abba. It is Aramaic, the everyday language of the street and the home. And it is the sound a small child makes reaching up for the one who feeds them. It is not, Father, the way you would address a king. It is closer to, Papa, Daddy, the first word a toddler learns. And you have to understand what that did to a first-century Jewish ear. The God of the Hebrew people was the God of Sinai, the God of the mountain that burned and smoked and shook so violently the people begged Moses to make him stop speaking. This was a God so holy that a man could not see his face and live. So holy that his very name was considered too sacred to say out loud. For centuries, when a scribe copying the scriptures came to that name, he would stop, wash, take up a fresh pen, and write the 4 letters with a trembling hand. That was the God, fire, smoke, silence, distance. And now a carpenter's son from Nazareth stands on a hillside and tells ordinary fishermen that when they talk to that God, the God of the burning mountain, they should open their mouths and say, Papa. It was almost scandalous. Some would have called it blasphemy. And Jesus does not soften it. He doubles down on it. Later, in a garden called Gethsemane, on the worst night of his life, with sweat coming off him like drops of blood, Jesus himself falls to the ground and prays. And the word that comes out of him is that same word. Abba, Papa, all things are possible to you. He did not teach us a word he was unwilling to bleed on. But stay with me, because there is a second shock hiding in plain sight, and it is the very first word of the whole prayer. He did not say, My Father. He said, Our Father. Think about that. Jesus, the one person in history who could rightfully claim a private, Exclusive relationship with God, refuses to pray alone. He hands you a prayer you cannot say by yourself. The moment you begin it, you are standing shoulder to shoulder with every other person who has ever whispered these words. The prisoner, the widow, the person you cannot stand, the stranger on the other side of the world praying it in a language you will never learn. You are not an only child in this house. You never were. So already, before we are even 3 words in, everything has flipped. The far-off God of the mountain is now close enough to climb into the lap of. And the private soul, alone with its problems, is suddenly part of an enormous, unwanted, glorious family. And then Jesus says the next line, and it pulls in the opposite direction, hard. Hallowed be thy name. Now, hallowed is a word we basically never use anywhere else. We say it in this prayer and nowhere in real life, which is exactly how a word goes dead in your mouth. So let me hand it back to you alive. The Greek is hagios theto. It comes from the root that means holy, but holy does not mean very. Very nice. It means other, set apart, different from everything else, in a class all its own. To hallow God's name is to say, you are not like anything else. You are not a bigger version of me. You are in a category that contains only you. And do you feel what Jesus just did? In the space of one breath he has held together 2 truths that most religions can only pick one of. He is Abba, close enough to whisper to in the dark. And he is holy, so far above you that his name once could not be spoken. Most people spend their whole lives collapsing God into one or the other. They make him a distant judge you can never please. Or they make him a cosmic best friend who exists to affirm you. And Jesus, in 11 words, refuses both, Papa, and holy, at the same time, never one without the other. That is the God this prayer is spoken to. Now watch where it goes next. Let me pause here for just a moment, because we are only 2 lines in, and look at how far this prayer has already carried us. We started with a God on a burning mountain, too holy to name, and in the space of a single breath, Jesus pulled that God close enough to call Papa, then set him high enough to fall silent before. Close and holy, in the same sentence. That is the whole Christian faith folded into 11 words. And we still have 6 lines to go, including that one word nobody in the ancient world could translate. If this is opening something up in you, do me a small favor. Subscribe, so the next line finds you when it goes out. And while you are down there, tell me this in the comments. Which line of this prayer do you say without thinking? The one your mouth knows so well your mind has stopped listening. Be honest, I read them. Now, line 3, and this is where the prayer stops being comfortable. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. We say this line gently, almost like a lullaby, but make no mistake, this is one of the most dangerous sentences you will ever pray. Because pay attention to what you are actually asking for. You are asking for a kingdom that is not yours. You are asking for a will that is not yours. When you pray, thy kingdom come, you are asking God to overrule every little kingdom you have built, the kingdom of your comfort, the kingdom of your opinions, the kingdom of your carefully arranged life, and to put his rule there instead. This is not a soft request. This is a surrender. And Jesus knew exactly how heavy this line was, because he had to pray it himself, and it nearly killed him. Go back to that garden, Gethsemane, the night before the cross. Jesus is on the ground. He knows what is coming, the nails, the mockery, the slow suffocation, and he prays, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. That is his will, to live, to be spared. Every cell in his body wants out. And then, in the same breath, he says the line, yet not my will, but thine be done. That is, thy will be done, prayed in the dark, with blood in the sweat. It is not a decoration. It cost him everything. So when you pray those words, understand what you are handing over. You are saying, God, even here, even in the thing I am most afraid of, your will, not mine. It is the bravest sentence in the prayer, and most of us say it half asleep. But it gets stranger, because right after this enormous, cosmic request, a whole kingdom, a whole surrendered will, Jesus suddenly drops all the way down to the smallest thing imaginable. Give us this day our daily bread. Bread, after the kingdom of God. We are asking about lunch. And this is exactly where we find that word. The one I told you about at the very start. The word Oregon went hunting for and could not find. Here it is. In Greek, the phrase we translate daily bread contains the word epousios. And here is the strange thing about it. That word appears essentially nowhere else. Not in the other Greek writings of the time. Not in the ordinary letters and shopping lists archaeologists have dug up from that world. Nowhere. It is as if Jesus needed a word that did not exist yet. So one was made for him. Origen, one of the most brilliant minds the early church ever produced, wrote a whole book on prayer, came to this word, and basically admitted, I have never seen this word anywhere in the Greek language. Nobody had. So what does it mean? For 2,000 years, the best scholars have circled it, and it seems to hold several meanings at once, like a stone with different faces. It can mean, the bread we need to exist, the absolute basics. Enough to survive today. It can mean, the bread for the coming day. Jerome, who translated the Bible into Latin, found an old Hebrew version of Matthew that rendered it with a word meaning tomorrow. Bread for tomorrow, ask for today. And it can mean something deeper still, the bread of the age to come. The food of God's kingdom breaking into your ordinary Tuesday. But hold all of that together and hear what Jesus is teaching you to ask for. Not a storehouse, not a year's supply, not enough to never have to trust again. Just today's bread, enough for today, and then you have to come back tomorrow and ask again. Do you see how uncomfortable that is? We want the full pantry. We want security we can measure, so we never have to depend on anyone. And Jesus hands us a prayer for one day's worth. On purpose. Because a full storehouse can make you forget the one who fills it. But a daily loaf keeps you looking up. Every single morning. The God of the burning mountain wants to have breakfast with you. That is what this line means. The same infinite God whose name could not be spoken cares whether you ate today. Stay with me, because now the prayer turns a corner, and asks the hardest thing of all. And forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Now, some of you grew up saying, trespasses. And some of you say, sins. And both are fine, but the word Matthew actually wrote is neither. It is ophilema, and it does not mean a stain or a mistake. It means a debt, an unpaid bill, something you owe that you cannot cover. That is how Jesus wants you to see what you have done wrong. Not as an abstract smudge on your record, but as a debt you have run up before a holy God and have no way to repay. And the prayer teaches you to stand there, empty-handed, and simply ask Him to cancel it, to tear up the bill. Which would be the most comforting line in the entire prayer, if it were not for the next two words. As we forgive. There it is, the most terrifying word in the whole prayer. And it is only 2 letters long. As. Forgive us, as we forgive. In the same way, by the same measure, Jesus ties the mercy you receive to the mercy you give. He will actually stop, right after this prayer, and say it out loud. If you forgive people, your Father forgives you. If you do not, He will not. Sit in the discomfort of that for a second. The person who wronged you. The one whose name still tightens your stomach. Jesus just put that person's debt in the same sentence as your own. He is saying, the hand you use to hold their throat is the same hand you are holding out to me for mercy. You cannot clench it and open it at the same time. You have to choose. This is the line that turns the prayer from something you recite into something that examines you. And most of us race past it. Because if we slowed down, we would have to do something. We would have to let someone off a hook we have been enjoying holding him on. But stay with me, because the prayer does not leave you standing there in guilt. It moves, immediately, to protection. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The word for temptation here is perismos. It is bigger than the pull to eat a second dessert. It means testing, trial, the crucible, the fire that reveals what you are actually made of. So you are praying, honestly, Father, I know myself, I know how thin I am. Do not walk me into the fire. Spare me the test I would fail. And then the final line. The last thing Jesus teaches you to say. And it hides one more shock. Deliver us from evil. We hear that word, evil, as a concept. An abstract cloud of bad things, suffering, cruelty, the general darkness in the world. But that is not quite what the Greek says. The words are ho poneros. And that little word, ho, is the difference between everything. It means the, deliver us from the evil one. Not evil in general, a person. Jesus ends the prayer by naming an enemy. He teaches you to close your eyes at night and ask your Father to pull you out of the hands of something that actively wants you destroyed. This prayer does not end in a garden of flowers. It ends with a child reaching up out of danger. And here is the thing you have to see about the whole prayer. Now that we are at the end of it, He did not give us a prayer about distant power. He did not give us a prayer we could say alone. He did not give us a prayer about earning our way in. He gave us a word a child cries in the dark. And that is the picture I want to leave you with, because it is the picture the whole prayer has been building toward. Think of a small child, woken in the middle of the night. The room is black. Something in the dark has frightened them, a shape, a sound. They could not even tell you what. They do not compose a speech. They do not use the right words. They do not have any theology at all. They only know one thing to do. They open their mouth in the dark and they cry out a single name. The name of the one who they know will come. That is this entire prayer. That is what Jesus has been teaching you the whole time. Strip away the beautiful old English. And underneath every line is a child in the dark, crying one word up to the only one who can reach down. And what was that word? Go all the way back to the beginning. Back to the very first thing He taught you to say. Abba. Papa. The prayer ends exactly where it began. In the arms it started in. There is a document from the earliest days of the church, older than some of the writings that made it into your Bible. It is called the Didache, which simply means, the teaching. And in it, the first Christians are given one instruction about this prayer. Say it 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. They did not treat it as a poem to admire. They treated it as bread, something you need again and again. Every few hours, or you starve. That same old document is also where a familiar ending first gets attached. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. It was the people's response, spoken back at the end. The way you might sign your name to something you mean with your whole life. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of this. The first is this. This prayer is not a formula. It is a map of a relationship. It moves from a name, to a longing for His kingdom, to bread for today, to mercy, to rescue, and it holds together 2 things about God we usually tear apart. He is holy, and He is Papa. Never trade one for the other. The second is closer to home. Every line of this prayer is asking you to depend. Daily bread, depend for today. Forgive us, depend for mercy you cannot earn. Deliver us, depend for a rescue you cannot pull off. This whole prayer is Jesus gently prying your fingers off the illusion that you have got it handled. You do not, and that is not the bad news. That is the doorway. And the third, the one I most want you to keep. Underneath all of it, under the kingdom and the debts and the daily bread, is a child in a dark room, crying one name up into the black. You do not need the right words. You never did. You only need to know which name to cry. He already taught you. It is the first word of the whole thing. Abba. So let me ask you before you go. Which line of this prayer will you never be able to say the same way again? The Papa, the daily bread, the terrifying little, as. Tell me down in the comments. I mean it, I read them. And the next time the words start to go smooth in your mouth, the way they have 1,000 times before. Slow down, because you are not reciting something old. You are a child in the dark, and you are crying out to the one who has never once failed to reach down.